There she is. So Courtney has been helping Triad for a long time. You may know Courtney's a senior program specialist at AARP, Wisconsin. Uh, Says here that she joined in May of 2018, but that's about the same time I joined RSVP and Triad, so uh, I you've been as long as I've been here, so it's terrific. She manages the Fraud Watch Network, which is a great service, and she also manages the Andrus Award for Community Service, which I'm proud to say one of our Triad volunteers won one year. Now, he isn't just involved with Triad, he does a lot of different things all over the city and the state, and so it was a well-deserved award, but here's Courtney putting it all together and making sure that volunteers get recognized. Courtney, let me just transfer the mic over to you for Slam the Scam. Go ahead, please.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mike. Gonna see if I can share my screen here. We got this. Share. All right. See if it'll go. There we go. All right. Hopefully everyone can see my slides. Cool. I can't see the Zoom chat right now, so if you want to put stuff in there, I can try to get to it at the end, but just know I won't be answering stuff kind of in real time, so I apologize. So like Mike said, my name is Courtney Anclam. I work for AARP Wisconsin. For folks who didn't know, AARP has an office in every state. So our office is in Madison. And I'm here today to talk about scams in AI. So I will have a little bit of overlap with Marisa. So where I see some of that kind of cropping up, I'll try to speed through it, or maybe we can skip some stuff so we have more time at the end for questions or comments or stories. Just a quick overview, what I'm going to cover today. I want to talk a little bit about why AARP cares about this problem. We're going to talk a little bit about artificial intelligence, like what it is, what it can do. And then we're going to talk about some scams and how AI can be integrated into those to make them more efficient. And then I'll cover some resources. And then I have time at the end, like I said, for questions, comments, stories, stuff like that. So a little bit about like AARP and why we care. So AARP is built on like three main pillars of work. We call them health, wealth, and self. And that wealth column really is concerned about financial security, right? Older adults being able to be hired like they should be, older adults being able to save money, having the accessibility of saving accounts and important retirement tools like Social Security, stuff like that. But we also recognize that part of your wealth is protecting it at the end of the day, right? Because criminals are trying to steal people's money. And so that's kind of like the path on which we got into this consumer protection work. And out of the consumer protection stuff came this Fraud Watch Network. And the Fraud Watch Network, I'm going to talk a little bit more about in our resources, but it's also kind of built in these three different areas, which is education, so making sure folks have resources to learn about different kinds of scams, support, so if somebody is the victim of a scam, they have somebody that they can trust, that they can turn to find out what they should do next. And then we do also do advocacy work at the federal level and at the state level. And that's trying to get policies in place to prevent stuff from happening. When we talk about AI, we've been in support of different legislation that has been kind of trying to put protections in place because AI is rapidly growing and it's going to do so much. And we really need to keep in mind protecting people at the end of the day needs to be a priority. So that's kind of an overview why AARP cares about this. And our website is there. I have it later in our resources section as well. All right, so I'm going to jump into artificial intelligence and what actually it is. Different people come to this in like different ways. So I have two different definitions there. But the gist of it is that AI, artificial intelligence, is a form of machine learning. So algorithms process large amounts of data. It looks for patterns and trends. And given enough data, artificial intelligence can learn to solve problems, and make predictions or mimic creations. And some of that is in quotes because I think sometimes people think of artificial intelligence and their mind goes to like that Will Smith movie, like I, Robot, and like, machines are alive and sentient and stuff like that. And really, artificial intelligence is like kind of think like a giant calculator. Like it's getting information and processing it. It's not having its own independent thoughts necessarily in the way that we think of it in a human way. So that's what AI is. And like what that's great. What does it actually do is probably the more interesting discussion. Um, and when we think about artificial intelligence and what it does, there's kind of like a spectrum. And I don't know if Marisa is still on the call, but I stole this little graphic on the left from their website, actually, from Senior Planet. They have a great explainer on artificial intelligence. So, anyways, it's kind of like a spectrum of abilities. And at one end, we have what we call predictive artificial intelligence. And a lot of that is stuff that you're probably using already and just haven't thought of it as artificial intelligence. So if you use like a voice assistant like Siri or Alexa, that's AI. If you've ever used a customer service chatbot, that's AI. If you are a Netflix user or an Amazon user and you're like scrolling Netflix and Netflix is like, hey, this like movie is a 96% match for you. They're getting that from algorithms. They're using artificial intelligence to guess what kinds of content you would be interested in based on all this data they have from other, millions of similar users. And then web search results also use artificial intelligence. So I have a screenshot there that I literally took yesterday of Google, and I just typed in how do you make and left it blank, and then you see all of these what we call autofill responses. So Google is trying to guess what I want to know how to make. And you can tell that it's fall because it's like, do you want to make apple cider? Do you want to make apple butter? Do you want to make caramel? So it's like taking, sorry, my dog, if you just heard my dog barking, it's taking this information that it knows, like it's autumn, people go to the apple orchard, like those are the kinds of things people are looking for right now. And it's giving me those guesses, like, is this what you want? Is this what you want? And sometimes it's not what I want, but it then becomes what I want. Like, oh, I didn't even think I could make apple butter at home. Yeah, I do want to know that. So that's all super helpful, right? And it's stuff that you're probably, like I said, using or experiencing already. And that's all artificial intelligence. It's really helpful, but it is not perfect. So you may be aware of Google recently launching this new kind of feature called AI Overview. And I literally searched for this yesterday to first of all make sure it was real and that it was still there. And I was trying to Google what is the difference between a sauce and a dressing? Because they seem very similar to me. And Google's AI Overview tells me that a sauce is a liquid or a semi-liquid mixture that adds flavor, moisture, and texture to food, while a dressing is a material that protects and promotes healing of a wound. And then when you look down here, it says sauce, got a definition of sauce, that's a picture of sauce, dressing, that's a picture of dressing, and then it's got a definition, technically that is a definition for dressing, right? But it's not the dressing I'm looking for, actually. So, and then if you look further down, this is unedited, this is directly below it. It tells me that sauces are cooked while dressings are uncooked. So if I look just a little bit further down the line, that's maybe an answer that I was actually looking for. And that came from the website Quora. And if you don't know, Quora is kind of like a discussion board or a forum where real people post answers. So you can see where AI is giving you an answer and like technically it's not telling me things that are wrong, but it lacks the context to understand what I mean as a human being. And then the answer from the real human makes more sense in context. So that's just a quick tip. The AI overview still exists right now. It's still being like, if you've Googled things, you've probably seen this. So just a quick thing, a quick note, don't always trust that. Sometimes it's wrong. All right, so that was all like predictive artificial intelligence. And I mentioned there's like this spectrum, and down at the other end of the spectrum is what's called generative AI. And these are programs that go a step further and they create things based on prompts. So Marisa kind of had mentioned this, that you can generate text, you can generate images, videos, audio. All of that is super easy to create online using these platforms that are sometimes free, sometimes really low cost. And I have a couple of examples here. The one on the left is a video from OpenAI Sora, and Sora is not available like to the public right now, but it can make realistic and imaginative scenes from text instructions. I'm just gonna hit play. Hopefully the video is playing for everyone. And you can see it's golden retriever puppies playing in the snow, and this is completely generated by artificial intelligence. And if you like look really closely and you kind of know the places to look, you might be like, well, that was kind of funky. But just like watching it, it looks very real. It looks very realistic. And then yesterday, I asked Microsoft Copilot to write me a cozy poem about autumn, and it did. So you can see it made me this poem called Whispers of Autumn. If you read it, it rhymes, it has a nice flow to it, it evokes like the warm, cozy feeling I was looking for. So again, Copilot, when it writes a poem, is like going out on this huge amounts of data and saying, poems have this kind of structure, autumn is related to these kinds of things, and it's processing all of this data to give me this thing. So it's generative in that it's creating something, but I don't want people to think that it's like making things up by itself. It's really pulling data and processing, and based on those patterns, giving you something that it thinks is probably correct. And like predictive AI, generative AI also has problems. So I also asked Copilot to generate me a photo of two people holding hands. And if you look at their hands, you can immediately tell there's something not quite right happening with the number of fingers involved. And like nobody would hold hands like this. So that's just, again, it's a really cool tool, but it is not without its flaws. And I know Marisa mentioned this, and I mentioned it a couple of times in my presentation as well. We're talking about what AI can do, its limitations, stuff like that. All of this will be very different in a year, so just something to keep in mind. So all of that sounds great and awesome, but like every technology, it can be abused and used for nefarious purposes. So I want to talk about how AI can come into different kinds of scams. So the biggest umbrella that I see as like a potential for AI to enhance scams is with this umbrella term that we use to talk about imposter scams. And that's anything where a criminal pretends to be someone they're not in order to get your money or information.
I'll just zoom out.
So if you have heard of the grandparent scam, the IRS gets impersonated, stuff like that. Those are all different kinds of imposter scams that AI can enhance. And these tools for generating images, videos, audio, they're available online at low or no cost. So I just included screenshots. I did a quick Google for each of these, like show me AI video generators. And these are just short little snippets of what the Google search returned. It is like pages of programs and websites that will do these things. So I want to talk a little bit about a scenario where a text generator could be used in a scam. So this company is called Civ AI, and they do really cool work like trying to illustrate the dangers of AI and the cybersecurity risks that it poses. And they have these demonstration videos. So the setup for this one is, first of all, they used AI to use one of their founders' LinkedIn profiles, and they used artificial intelligence to rake and summarize and aggregate data about that person. So this is kind of like the overview of this person's LinkedIn account. And they have set up an AI tool that it's not like widely available. They do this just for like demonstration purposes, but they have a tool that can write spear phishing emails based on that person's LinkedIn account. So this is creating an email based on his personal and professional interests. And you can see like within a second, it has generated this really well-written email. A lot of the time when we talk about scam emails, you can usually tell because the grammar is bad and stuff like that, but this is really well written. And the thing I like about this example is that they also included the LinkedIn link in this person's bio at the bottom in their email signature. And if Lucas were to respond to this, he might go, oh, I should check out who Mike Hayes is. So he clicks on the LinkedIn link, he signs in to view this person's LinkedIn profile, and it turns out the link is actually a password harvesting website. So this is an example of something you see in real scam emails. So if you get a link, an email from Amazon, and they're like, hey, your payment information has expired, you need to log in and enter that information. A lot of the time that link will take you to similar websites that are just harvesting your login information. So that goes back to like some of the stuff that Marisa was talking about, being sure that when you're clicking links, you really know who it's coming from. So that's an example of like text generation being leveraged in a scam. Tips for this are mostly, I geared it towards like getting weird emails. And again, Marisa covered a lot of this. If somebody requests sensitive information or demands urgent action, like sending money, those are immediately red flags. And you're going to want to check the email address that it came from. And definitely, if you hover over a link before you click on it, it'll tell you the URL that you're going to. So if you're hovering over a link that's supposed to go to Amazon and the URL says like short URL dot blah, 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 and has a bunch of weird numbers and letters, you don't want to click on that. So those are some tips for that type of scam. You can also use video generation in scams. So if you remember those cute little puppies playing in the snow from Sora, you can imagine that a scammer might use a video like that to say, hey, I'm selling these puppies. Look at how cute they are. And then unfortunately, what ends up happening is once they get the money, there's no puppy, there's no real dog. So this is like a real scam that we see, these pet scams, especially around the holidays where scammers are really milking the like, bring a new pet home for Christmas type of situation. So they could use video generation for that. Another thing is these celebrity deep fakes or deep fakes of like any public figure. So there are these like celebrity imposter scams where, Tom Cruise messages you on Facebook and says, hey, like I'm trying to launch this new movie, I need money, or like, I really want to meet you or something like that. So these celebrity imposter scams are already pretty prevalent. And now with this video generation technology, it will be even easier for them to send convincing messages. So this video I'm about to play looks at a TikTok account called Deep Tom Cruise. I'm not a TikTok user, but if you are, you can go check out this account. It's basically this man who creates these videos, and I'll play it and then I'll explain it to you. So there, I couldn't get the sound to work, but these videos look like actual Tom Cruise, right? and it looks very smooth and very real. None of these are Tom Cruise. This is just like some guy. And then he and his friend use artificial intelligence to map Tom Cruise's face onto his, so it looks like him. So this is where you could imagine criminals would use this kind of technology to like send a video and say something like, "Hey, it's me, Tom Cruise." Um, and this was the Today Show did a whole like kind of interview with this guy and like why he has this account and stuff like that. And for the record, Tom Cruise is not like mad about it. He hasn't reached out to them to like cease and desist. So um, that exists if you want to take a peek at that. Um, and some tips for spotting fake videos, which again is like a for now type of FYI. If you see strange shadows, blurs, or light flickers in the video, if there is unnatural body language, and then if the audio is choppy or like it doesn't match with what the person is doing. So a lot of the time I've seen like AI generated video, like the mouth, because artificial intelligence has such a hard time with details, it really struggles with mouth. So like lips are very stiff and like their mouth isn't opening and closing the way it should. And these tips work really well for those like, there's some websites where you can generate stuff for free or for just a couple of bucks, and then there's like more expensive websites that do it better. So these tips are really good for like really low quality generated videos. The more money and time people invest in this, and the better it gets, the more difficult it's going to be to like apply these tips. Um, and for the scams I mentioned, so for pet scams, you're going to want to ensure that you see the puppies in person before you actually purchase them, and also using a trusted rescue or organization that's like local to you. Those are both good ways to kind of suss out those pet scams. And always just be wary of any contact from a celebrity and definitely don't send them any money. Um, so that's the celebrity imposters. Image generation, I have a few more examples because I think it's the most easily available one out of them. And it has popped up in my real life. So I have a couple examples of this. So um, somebody on my Facebook shared an image of like a cabin, and I went to that Facebook's page and scrolled through all their photos because I have work purposes to be looking, but also I'm just nosy and it's interesting to me. So imagine you're looking for somewhere to stay on vacation. You find this photo in the listing for a rental. Would you stay there? Yeah, it looks gorgeous. Like I want to be eating pizza, looking out over the water and the mountains are there. Like I would stay there. That's looks fantastic. This image though is AI generated. So I've circled some of the things. I know the slide is kind of busy and I apologize. If you look at the clock, first of all, how is it hanging there? I don't understand the physics of that. And when you look at the face of the clock, you can see that the numbers, they don't make any real sense. And then here on the table, this box, you can see it's supposed to have like the Coca-Cola logo on it, maybe, but the actual item looks like it's maybe an old-timey oil can. And when you look at this other box on the table, it also has the Coca-Cola label, kind of, but it's for like chips. And then over here in the corner on the side on the right, there's a lot of architectural stuff there I don't really understand. It seems like there's a door on the inside and a door on the outside, but like there's a table in the way of the door here. And there's also a door over here because I think that's another door. And the door jamb is here, which makes, anyways, it's definitely one of those things where once you start looking, you're kind of like, I can't really tell what's going on. And when I try to make sense of it, it doesn't make sense. So um, you could imagine somebody listing, on Airbnb saying, hey, eat pizza by the mountains, look out over the lake, and using these kinds of photos to entice people. And then somebody might send money to put down a deposit to reserve the space. And then, that money is just gone. This location probably doesn't really exist. And unfortunately, criminals are just going to steal that money. I don't know if anyone else on this call crochets. It's one of my hobbies. So this is a little, these next two examples are a little more niche. But I have seen this image circulating around where people are like, oh my gosh, so impressive, so cool. And I'm wondering if you would purchase this life-size crochet elephant. Um, Probably you're thinking, I would have nowhere to put that, so no, which is fair. But this is also AI generated. And if you do crochet, you can probably see why and guess why, like the stitches don't make sense. You could never really crochet something of this scale with the way it is. But there's also other tips. You don't have to be a crochet expert to know this is kind of bizarre. I didn't circle the stuff that's wrong with her, but you can see she only has like 3 fingers on this hand. Her toes are weird. I do not recommend zooming in, but they are weird. Her face, like some of the details get kind of uh, jumbled as well. And when you look at the elephant itself, you can tell there's 1, 2, 3 legs for sure. And then back here, I can't tell if this is one huge leg in the back or if it's 2 legs. And this is another thing where like a real human being, if they were crocheting a giant elephant, all of the legs would be proportionate, right? They would be the exact same size and shape. And then if you look at the shadow that this thing is casting, you can see that like the shadow for what's supposed to be the trunk is not connected to what is supposed to be the body. Like it just doesn't make sense. So you can spot it that way as well. Um, and then this is another crochet example. So for people who don't know, if you do any kind of like yarn craft, like crochet, knitting, whatever, a lot of the time you're following a written pattern that's telling you what kind of yarn to use, what kind of stitches to do, all of that kind of stuff. And people pay money for these patterns so that they can make sweaters. So a lot of people sell patterns on websites like Etsy or other, Facebook Marketplace, stuff like that. People sell patterns. And this might be an image you would see in a crochet pattern listing. And I feel like by now you guys know to say no, but would you buy this crochet pattern if this dress is in the photo listing? And hopefully you say no. Again, part of it is the stitches are weird, but if you look at some of the details again, you can see that this dress is being held up by nothing on this side. And when you look at where these gaps are, where the holes are in the stitching, you can see the grass through the dress on this side, which makes sense because there's grass behind it. But you can also see grass over here where there should be this woman's dress, right? And then if you look at her bangs, they kind of like, it's very fuzzy where her bangs end and where her forehead begins. And part of that you could say is just like she's got wispy hair, like that's the texture of it. But that's another kind of hallmark of artificial intelligence is it really, really struggles with details and kind of like where the foreground should start and where the background should start. And so that's just another kind of tip to us that this is probably AI generated. Uh, you might be able to tell I'm kind of like really interested by this image generation when it comes to artificial intelligence. On AARP's website, we have this quiz that you can take. And I took this screenshot because I just showed you guys some kind of more blatant and maybe a little bit ridiculous images that have been generated by artificial intelligence. These are really, really convincing images that are AI generated. And I tried taking this quiz on our website and I failed. So that just goes to show you even someone like me who's like really interested and has been like trying to read up about it, there's always, it's going to outpace me. It's going to grow faster than what I can realistically keep up with. But trying to stay on top of it and trying to learn and trying to train your eyes is always going to be so important, like Marisa was talking about. So yeah, I just wanted to share these. I don't even remember which ones are fake at this point. I'm pretty sure there's 4 of them that are AI generated. So if you look at these and you're like, I have no idea, same. I still don't know. So, like I said, that just goes to show the importance of like continuing to train your eyes on this stuff. So, how do I spot AI generated images? I know we've kind of talked about this already, but again, you're going to look for strange shadows and blurs. Artificial intelligence really struggles with details. So that's usually fingers and hands, eyes. Another thing is like symmetry. So, like on that dress that we looked at, we talked about how you could see the grass through the holes in the stitches. Another thing is like the it wasn't the same all the way across. And a real human being would make a dress that's symmetrical because we like crave symmetry. So if you're like, looking at a picture of a castle and it's got this really ornate gate in front of it or something, and the gate has like, filigree that curves up on one side and filigree that curves down and kind of is broken into several pieces on the left, that's a sign. Like I mentioned, the foreground and the background kind of melting together. And then another thing is that if an image looks too polished, like it's got this airbrushed kind of feature to it, and that image that I generated of two people holding hands at the more towards the beginning of the presentation, to me, that had this uncanny valley type of feeling to it. And if you've never heard the phrase uncanny valley, it kind of describes this sensation of like looking at something and knowing it's not quite right. Like it's trying to show me a human and I can see human features, but I know it's not a real person. And this like too polished, uncanny valley sensation is something that for me is often really difficult to pinpoint. It's more of like a gut feeling of like, there's something weird about this. So for the like again, the lower end of AI generated images, these are things to look out for as it continues to evolve. These things might still be true, but it'll be better at hiding or doing these kinds of things. And the scams I talked about were like travel and online shopping related. So Marisa already talked about a bunch of this using trusted websites, confirming the URL that you're shopping on, um, checking reviews. And part of that is not just reading reviews on their website, but also looking for other sources. So, like maybe a Google review or a Yelp review, the Better Business Bureau, stuff like that. If you can search for the company or the retailer and the word scam. So if I was worried that Kohl's was a scam, I would just search Kohl's scam and see what popped up. And then just always being wary of deals that sound too good to be true. So if we think back to our vacation spot with the pizza, if somebody was offering that cabin for $50 a night, that would be another added layer of that's way too good. It's on the water. It's got a beautiful view. There's no way that that is legitimate. And then I just wanted to cover like red flags in general for imposter scams. The unsolicited contact out of the blue, demanding urgent action and immediate payment, especially if they're asking for payment by gift card, money transfer, or cryptocurrency. So a lot of scams kind of follow this same blueprint of like, um, you get contacted out of the blue. They're probably very friendly and helpful. They're going to ask you to do something because there's a problem. They're going to try to get you into a heightened emotional state, and then they're going to get you to act right away. Send that information, send that money. And if you find yourself kind of moving along that blueprint, you can pause and say, hang on, I recognize this, regardless if it's, the IRS, Amazon, Norton, all of these people get impersonated and it kind of follows the same trajectory. Um, and then just some general red flags when it comes to artificial intelligence. Uh, Context is key. So does the photo make sense? And I have included this photo of the Pope in a puffer jacket. And you might have seen this photo already because it went like super viral, I think last year maybe. And it is AI generated. And one of the things that should give it away right away is I don't think I've ever seen the Pope wear a puffer jacket. You know what I mean? Like he's got a very specific outfit he wears. So like just thinking, does it make sense that I'm seeing this? And then just being really wary of inflammatory images and videos, especially around inflection points like elections. So there was a primary, I think just last year or earlier this year, where somebody used AI generated audio to sound like an elected official to try to get people to not vote in a primary. And there were like news stories about that. Around this election that just happened, we saw AI generated images floating around. And like I said, it's just really important to think of like the context you're seeing it in, and especially if it's in an inflammatory, like high tension state of time, like that's when people are going to try to use these types of images to sway your thinking, to get you to send money, stuff like that. And just remembering in general with artificial intelligence, the details matter a lot. So overall, I know that Marisa kind of had this kind of point as well, but like AI and scams are both evolving. They're only going to get more effective the more that they change. So we have to be sure that we're just like taking time to pause and assess before we make big decisions, share information, or send money. And sometimes it's really hard to remind ourselves to pause because they're getting us emotional. But the more we can kind of train ourselves to take that moment to really think things through, the better prepared we are in these situations. I want to talk a little bit about some resources, and I have all of this in a Word document, and I'm going to copy and paste it into the Zoom chat. So you can copy and paste from there if you want, or you can take notes right now. But these are some resources as it comes to fraud and scams, and these are based in Wisconsin because I personally think that having like local people makes a big difference. So Triad and RSVP, I don't have them listed here, but they are super helpful and they're connected to lots of different people. So of course, since you already know them, you can go to them first. You can also go to the Department of Agriculture, Trade, and Consumer Protection. I mentioned them earlier because they administer our do not call list, which works, but is still frustrating. And you can go to their website, that's datcap.wi.gov. They have a phone number you can call. They also have an email address that you can send stuff to. And all of those places you can report fraud and scams. On their website, they have lots of information and articles and press releases and stuff. And I have been told by somebody at DatCap, when you call the hotline, you talk to a real person in 22 seconds. And I love the idea of that promise. And I challenge you to call that phone number and test it out. If you're ever in a situation where you might think something is a scam or you're not sure about it, give them a call and see if you talk to someone in 22 seconds. Another great resource is the Senior Medicare Patrol. I did not talk about Medicare fraud at all today, but it is a really big problem. It's usually something that's more instigated by like shady medical, I don't even want to call them institutions, people pretending to be legitimate medical institutions, like sending you a brace and stuff like that. Anyways, I don't talk about it because I'm not a Medicare expert, but SMP is. So their website has information and resources. You can also call them. You can report Medicare fraud to them. They can help you go over explanations of benefits to see if stuff is legitimate. Like I said, they're the experts when it comes to Medicare. And then another area that I is really not my wheelhouse is stuff like investments, brokers, stuff like that. If you have questions about that kind of stuff, the Department of Financial Institutions has excellent resources. dfi.wi.gov would be where you would find some of that stuff. And I kept the list pretty short because the reality is, and people on this call who work in this space know this, there are tons of organizations and government departments that are working on different aspects of fraud. And it can be really, really overwhelming when you're in a situation where maybe you're scared you're going to lose money and stuff like that. It's really overwhelming to know where to start. So I tried to keep the list short, and I will say DATCAP does a really great job of if they're not the right organization to work through an investigation for you, they will connect you with the department or organization that can help you. So if you're really not sure where to start, you can, like I said, start with Mike at Triad and he can tell you where to go. You can start with me and I can tell you where to go, or you can go to DATCAP and they'll get you to the right place. So, and then we talked a little bit about the Federal Trade Commission earlier because they had that like online safety resource. I just wanted to quickly make a plug for their website does have like advice and resources about different kinds of scams. You can see you can also register for the do not call list on their website. You can also sign up for consumer alerts, which are really nice. They kind of highlight different scams. But the one resource I really love from them is identitytheft.gov. So if you've been the victim of something like a data breach and you get that letter and they're like, your social security number was compromised, your, retirement savings account was compromised, your healthcare, whatever was compromised, that's all going to potentially lead to identity theft. So going to identitytheft.gov is a good resource because you can kind of input what information was lost, and the Federal Trade Commission will give you kind of a checklist of action items. So it's really nice, like I said, especially when it comes to scary stuff like your social security has been compromised, to get like a hard and fast checklist of things you can do to kind of start to repair some of that damage. And then our AARP resources, of course, I have to talk a little bit more about those. I listed our website there again, aarp.org/fraudwatchnetwork. And our website has like guides on different scams. So if you were like, Courtney, you barely talked about Amazon imposter scams, and I really need to know more about that, you can go to our website and there are these really well-written guides that are kind of like, here's how it works, here's what you should do, and here's what you shouldn't do. They're pretty handy. There are articles on trending scams. So you guys know the holiday season is coming up, so people naturally have more questions about things like porch pirates, buying gift cards for people, donating to charities, things like that. And so you'll see articles about these kind of like seasonal things crop up. We have a podcast. If you're a podcast enjoyer, it's kind of nice to just put something on when you're like driving somewhere or like folding laundry. And they do these like deep dives on real scams that have happened across the country. We did have one that featured a story from Wisconsin last year, I think. And that was like a contractor scam that was really interesting to learn more about. And then you can also sign up for our watchdog alerts. You can get those by text or email. And those are just kind of trying to keep scams top of mind for you. And again, we try to like line them up for like when we know, IRS scams are going to pop up around tax season. So we're going to send out an email about that around that time. So those are just helpful reminders because the more we're kind of thinking about this, the more vigilant we are, the better prepared we are to stop this kind of stuff. And then some resources we have that I think are maybe a little more unique because there's like I said, a lot of organizations working on education. Our helpline and our support groups are both really designed to give victim support. So you can call our helpline Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. The people on the other end of the line are trained volunteers. So they've been trained about different resources. They have like, depending what state you're in, like different lists of organizations that they send you to. But they're also trained in this kind of like emotional aspect because if you've ever been the victim of a scam or you know someone who has, you know that there is this really intense emotional aspect that comes with it. People are scared, they are ashamed, they're just like embarrassed that it happened, they're angry. And our volunteers are trained to kind of work through that a little bit. But because they were seeing all of this kind of emotional stuff, they're like, we need something specifically for this. So AARP created these support groups. You can learn more at aarp.org/fraud support. They're free, they're online, and they're confidential. And those are really designed to help people work through their emotions and to give them a safe space to talk about what they're feeling without having to worry about being judged or there being any kind of repercussions. Especially when you see older folks, they're worried about their adult children judging them, their adult children wanting to put them in a home or like taking away financial responsibility, stuff like that. So the support groups are really to give people a space to talk about it without having to worry about those kinds of things. And I just want to mention for the helpline, because I'm sure there are some adult children on the call today. A lot of the times what happens is someone who is being victimized by a criminal, and you can tell that it's a scam because you're not the person like living it, but that person won't listen to you because they're being manipulated by the scammer. Um, and sometimes it helps to have like a third party come in and be like, this is a red flag. This is suspicious. I think this might be fraudulent. And also, if you just need someone to talk to about your experience trying to support someone who's being victimized, you can also call the helpline. So it's for victims and like family members of victims. So again, I'll copy and paste that stuff into the chat if you have an interest in either of those. And then the other half of my presentation was about artificial intelligence. So aarp.org/AI is a landing page we have, and it's kind of cool. They split it up into like possibilities and perils. And so it like highlights the pros and cons of these different things, and it goes really in depth, much more than I could in the 45 minutes I had today. So if you're interested in learning more specifically about AI, those are a good place to start. And of course, I will back up Marisa and say the Senior Planet has really great classes, like pretty frequently, about artificial intelligence. So I would check them out for sure if you are curious about it. And I just want to, this is the end, but I want to talk about how you can kind of like lead the fight against these things, because I know it's really frustrating to hear about all these fraud and scams and all this technology that is just like mind blowing and it's being used for bad reasons. And like, what can we do about it? And when it comes to fraud, my number one thing that you can do to fight back is to talk about it and to support people who are experiencing it. Sharing information on social media like Nextdoor and Facebook really lets people know on a local level, like, hey, I got this weird mailer or I got this text message from the post office or whatever, so people can kind of be aware of it before it gets to them. And just talking to people um, and when we do speak about fraud, we need to make sure we're avoiding blaming victims. So you don't ever want to say something like, how could you fall for that? Or like, you'd have to be an idiot to not know that was a scam. I understand that we've been trained to think this way, and so it may be really difficult to like untrain your brain. And in that case, I would say you don't have to say those things out loud either. If you can't stop yourself from thinking it, just don't say it out loud. Because when we make people feel bad for being the victim of a crime, they're not going to want to come forward if it happens again. They're not going to report it. That means the authorities don't get information to go after people. And that person just kind of feels crappy. Like that accomplishes nothing good for us. So we always want to acknowledge a crime has been committed. And just staying informed. So like you guys showing up and being on these presentations is already like a huge step. Keep doing these kinds of things. Eventually you'll get to the point where you're like, yeah, I know that. Okay, strong passwords. Okay, yeah, like weird fingers. I get it. But each time you go to something, even for me, there's like little nuggets where I'm like, oh yeah, and that. So the more you can like engage in these kinds of programs, the better. And when it comes to artificial intelligence, I know it can be kind of, again, overwhelming and a little bit like, well, I'm never going to use it. Why do I care? the fact is it's going to be incorporated into your life, whether you know about it or not. And so continuing to be educated as much as you can about it and just approaching it with curiosity and being like, oh, that's so neat, can really help you kind of continue to stay engaged with it. That's the end of my presentation. That is my email address. I know especially when we talk about scams, people may have questions about specific situations or like stuff they don't want to say out loud in front of other people. And I totally get that. Feel free to send me an email. Also, for anyone on the call who is a professional, like working with people, or if you're just like average citizen, also, you can request that I send you brochures. You can hand those out to friends and family, leave them in the library, do whatever. And then you can also request community presentations. So if you made it through this whole thing and you were like, whoa, kind of liked listening to Courtney talk about this. I wonder what else she has to say, or I want her to do this for my church group, send me an email, let me know. So yeah, that's the end of my presentation. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen and then see if anyone has questions, comments. I'm gonna drop those resources in the chat also.
Wonderful. Thank you, Courtney. That was fantastic. Everyone, please feel free to unmute yourselves and join the conversation. Jump right in. We've got about 15 minutes yet with Courtney here.
Courtney, sorry. Courtney, AARP did a Slam the Scam event in Milwaukee last year in April.
Mhm.
And would you guys consider doing something like that in Madison? I did go to that and it was amazing. And there were over 100 older adults there. The word got out. It was really good. Just wondering if you guys would consider doing Madison.
Yeah, for sure. So we're actually in the process of like planning for next year. And Madison is definitely one of the communities I have my eye on. We have a lot of great partners here, like APS, like Triad. So it would be fantastic to be in the community. And if we end up doing that for the professionals on the call, you would probably get invited to have a table or maybe speak, and if not, to share information with like people you engage with. So, and for people who are not professionals on the call, the thing she's talking about is we had like an event, we had 3 speakers, they talked about different aspects of scams, and then there's like a Q&A session, and we had a resource fair so you could connect directly with the people who are experts in these areas. So if that sounds interesting to you and you're in the Madison area, keep your eyes peeled. We're hoping to do like April or October. But if that works out, I'll definitely be in touch with some people on this call.
Okay, next. All right, who's being bashful?
I was gonna say it's like
Pretty quiet
2
here.
presentations back to back. You guys just got so much information. I feel like sometimes people just need to process and there's no questions because you're just working so hard on thinking.
I don't have any questions, but I have to say I learned a ton listening to you. So I'm really grateful. I took notes like crazy over here. And I'm just, yeah, I'm new to this AI stuff for real. I don't study it. I don't know anything about it. So this was really, really helpful for me to hear all this. I thank you.
Oh, I'm glad to hear it. Thank you.
Yeah, I agree, Courtney. I learned a lot too. I was taking notes too. We'll all compare our notes, but I learned a lot. And as a victim of ID theft, I like, thank you very much for informing everybody and giving us all this great information.
Yeah, and I'm sorry to hear that happened. And unfortunately, especially with ID theft, it's like no fault of our own most of the time. Like those data breaches just get so many folks, and it's just,
They
it's
do.
unfortunate. Yeah.
One thing I was thinking about is, the scams, like you emphasized in your last bit, they follow the same pattern, right? But this artificial intelligence just lets them be much more efficient. You know, scamming is a numbers game. You've got to get out and hit on people to get, you know, the fish to bite. And so this just lets them be even more persuasive and efficient. I mean, it's just amazing what they're doing. And I know I've tried to use AI to create a few things when I couldn't find an image, you know, and it's pretty good, and it cost me nothing other than just you know, the hour to sit there and do it. And imagine if you have money to plow into it. So
Mhm.
remember Courtney's, you know, line is, you know, be, you know, aware, you know, don't react in emotion, I guess. It just is so easy to get swept up by these guys. And an AI scam is no different from, you know, a regular con man trying to get, you know, money out of your wallet. It's the same thing, but this just lets them really, really be persuasive.
Yeah. And I know I talked a lot about kind of the doom and gloom when it comes to artificial intelligence, but like Mike is saying, you can use it to generate fun images. Like when I was trying to make that sketchy looking picture to show you guys how it can be wrong, I tried like show me a dog on a surfboard. And it was just like, I don't know, so silly and joyful that I was like, oh neat, it's not all not all terrible. And one of the articles on that AARP/AI website talks about a woman who used artificial intelligence to like go through her family tree and kind of like recreate some different things with that. So there's definitely like fun uses, which goes back to some of the stuff Marisa was talking about, just being careful of the kinds of information we give it. But you know, like if you want to send everybody a holiday card this year and you want to include a fun poem about a snowman, but you're not a poet, AI can write a poem for you. So there are like fun and good uses for it for sure. It's just we have to, yeah, be vigilant always.
Mhm. Well, this, I mean, this AI, they can, you know, the computer can write all sorts of scripts, you know, to and constantly improving, you know, to make it even more persuasive. And so, you know, it's
Yeah.
really quite a tool. Anyway, any other questions, please? Courtney, you've done a fantastic job. The information is amazing.
Thank you.
Just who else? Anyone else?
I will also let you guys know one of the links I shared is another AI presentation we did with some of our folks from the national office, and they talk a lot more about artificial intelligence and kind of the way it can be used for election misinformation, which I know we just lived through an election, but it's something that will continue to crop up. So I didn't touch on it today, but if that's something that intrigues you, that link is in the chat.
Yeah, that's amazing. Anyone else before we let Courtney take a breather here? No, okay. Well, Courtney, thank you so much. Wonderful job. And thank you for supporting Triad for so many years. I really appreciate it.
Of course. Thanks so much for having me. And thank you all for being here and caring about this stuff. I appreciate it.